Welcome to Forensic Friday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, backed by popular demand, my nails. I normally do makeup here, but today I'm going to be doing my nails because you guys have been asking for it. Today's video is going to be featuring the Beetle Gel Nail Polish Gel Kit. I don't know, from Amazon. All the other items I'm using in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I'm not a professional at anything I'm doing here in this video, and that will become more and more apparent as you watch me. I am just the average girl at home like you, planning my makeup, doing my jacked up nails, and whatever else I want to do, and talking about true crime. So if that's something you're into, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I know a lot of you have watched a ton of my videos and for whatever reason just have not hit the button. Hit that button, please. Thank you. Really helps me out. Quick reminder, the comment section is a privilege. Don't fuck it up. Okay, that's all I have to say. Let's get into today's case. Ooh, we're getting naked already. Excuse me. Now, this all takes place in Jefferson County, Missouri in the year 1989, where a young newlywed couple, Patricia and David Stalling, lived with their 4-month-old son, Ryan. They had been married for just 1 year, and they lived in a house that overlooked Lake Wananoka, I think. It was right outside of St. Louis. David worked as a printer and Patricia worked in a local grocery store. Now, when Ryan was born, he was very, very ill, and he had always been ill since he was born. He had always had a lot of health issues. On July 9th, 1989, Ryan became very, very ill. He started vomiting and just like violently ill to the point where his mom, Patricia, decided that at this point she needed to take him to the hospital. And she drove him to Cardinal General Hospital in St. Louis. He had been suffering from chronic gastric distress for a while, but it just got increasingly bad over time, and at this point it was so bad that they had to do something about it. He wasn't able to breathe, he was vomiting, he was really bad. If you guys are wondering what that little mark is on my hand, I was baking cookies and I managed to burn my hand. So yeah, that's what that little mark is, just in case you guys are wondering. Just kidding. And actually, on the way to the hospital, Patricia ended up getting lost. She was trying to go to another hospital but couldn't find it, and that's how she ended up at this one. By the time she got to the hospitals and the doctors took a look at little baby Ryan, he was completely comatose. That's how they would describe him. He was so badly ill, you guys. He was just vomiting like crazy. They performed a number of different tests on him, and they came to the conclusion that little baby Ryan had been poisoned. Now, Ryan's blood samples were sent out to an outside lab. It was the SmithKline Beecham lab. They diagnosed him with ethylene glycol poisoning. Ethylene glycol, as they would explain it, is a colorless, sweet substance that is found in industrial solvent resin. In large enough doses, these types of substances can be fatal. I can't substances. I'm so sorry. So concerned, obviously, the hospital notified the Missouri Police Department as well as the Children Family Services Department in Missouri, because I mean, a 4-month-old child comes in with this kind of poisoning. We know that there was no way he could have ingested it himself because he's 4 months old, so it would have had been fed to him. Investigators did a full search of the Stallings home, and when they went into the basement of the Stallings home, they found something very, very peculiar. Now, in the basement, underneath a pool table, the investigators found 2 bottles of antifreeze. Now, these containers were more than halfway empty. I know you ain't feeding this baby antifreeze, girl. Patricia? With further investigation, they found that one of the main ingredients in antifreeze is ethylene glycol. A few days later, Ryan's health did improve and he was released from the hospital, but he was not returned to his parents, Patricia and David. Instead, the Department of Family Services took him. They placed him into foster care until they were able to complete their investigation. Obviously, they needed to look a little bit deeper into Patricia and David, and in doing so, they found some really startling information. They found that Patricia had actually had another child, a 5-year-old son, that was taken away and put into the custody of her sister because of allegations of child abuse. The state found that he had been in the early stages of frostbite and he was malnourished. So she just explained to the officers that she didn't have any money and anywhere to live, and the reason why her son was in that state was because she as well was in that state because she didn't have any money or a place to live or a place to put him. Police believe that either David or Patricia had poisoned Ryan. Although police had their suspicions, no charges were filed on either parent. After Ryan was put into foster care, Patricia and David were only allowed to see him for 1 hour a week. It had to be supervised visits and it would be only 5 weeks. So they were doing these visits and the visits continued to happen with no incidents, nothing bad happening. Ryan was fine. It didn't appear to be sick or anything strange happening. Until on the last week when Patricia was visiting Ryan, she had been left alone and unattended despite the fact that she was not to be left alone and unattended. The social worker that was there with her did leave the room momentarily. Once again, he was taken to the hospital where they diagnosed him with ethyl glycol poisoning again. I mean, is it a coincidence? I don't know. Sound like a really big coincidence to me. The only thing that had changed from the previous visits was that Patricia had been left alone this time on the visit. So police arrested Patricia. David remained by his wife's side and tried to get Patricia released to see Ryan, but the judge refused. And on September 7th, 1989, Ryan was taken off of life support. He passed away at 6:30 a.m. that morning. He wasn't even 6 months old. Patricia's charges were upgraded to a first-degree murder charge, and she was not allowed to attend Ryan's funeral. Either this woman is having a really hard-ass time and this is all a coincidence and she just has a lot of bad luck, or she killed that baby. So one of the things that really alarmed police was that they found even more ethyl glycol in Ryan's blood this time. It was about 911 milligrams per milliliter in his blood. They also sent Ryan's blood to a toxicology lab at the University of St. Louis, and they performed another test called mass spectrometry. And get this, you guys, they found the same thing: ethylene glycol in Ryan's blood. Forensic scientists performed tests on the bottle that was used to feed Ryan while Patricia was on her visit. And even though the bottle had been washed out, it showed traces of ethylene glycol. This is where police's theory started to come into play. They believed that Patricia had added the poison to the baby's bottle when the worker left the room. So her ass should be fired too, because her ass should not have been leaving the room. Now, part of Ryan's treatment while he was in the hospital was fasting, and they also gave him ethanol to counteract the ethylene glycol, and just 1 week later he would die. Now, because Patricia was in prison at the time of her son's death, the social worker actually called the prison to tell Patricia that Ryan had died, which is like really sad. And obviously, police was listening to the phone call, and they just felt like Patricia's response to hearing that her son had passed away was very suspicious, because she was kind of more concerned about getting her husband on the phone so that she could get out of prison. But you know, honestly, when you think about it, if somebody told you that your son was like dead, you would probably be like, get me out of this shit too. I don't know, that's just me. I can understand also why it would raise suspicion as well, but I mean, we all mourn in different ways. I mean, I guess when you put this, I'm not on her side, okay, you guys, I'm just saying, you know, trying to give everybody a benefit of a doubt. But what I will say is that when you put all this circumstantial evidence together and you take a look at her reaction, it's a little not right. It's a little bit distasteful. I don't know, you guys. I don't know. This is a tough one to make a call on, and I know I'm gonna get people in the basement. I like to call it the basement now. It's no longer the comment sections. You guys are now called the basement because I don't like to go down there. I'm just kidding. A lot of you guys are very, very lovely, wonderful people and have been so kind and nice to me, and I love speaking with you. It's just those few millennials who holding me to a higher standard than I actually am capable of. So if you guys notice that I'm not in the comment section as much as I used to, and I don't answer back as frequently as I used to, yeah, it's not one of my joys to go into the comments. It can be quite overwhelming in the comment section, I'll just say that. But y'all ain't gonna stop me. I'm still gonna make content. All I'm gonna do is turn y'all asses off. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about her reaction and the way she's behaving in the comments down below. She could have just been in shock, honestly. Something else was about to happen. 3 months later, while Patricia Stalling was in jail, she found out that she was again pregnant. During the time she was pregnant in prison, she made friends with a prison guard who describes her as very depressed and distraught about her situation. Clearly, she's in prison and she's pregnant. I would be distraught as well. And just 5 months after little baby Ryan Stallings had passed away, Patricia was now giving birth to a new child. On February 27th, 1990, Patricia gave birth to David Jr., her third child, which they nicknamed DJ. He was born at Madison County Hospital, which was just near the prison where Patricia had been living, I don't even know, what would you call that, where she had been held. Yes. Despite everything that had occurred, the Stallings were still trying to, make the best out of the situation. So they just continued on. Now, despite the fact that David was not a suspect in his son's death, he was allowed to take little baby DJ home, but he became a ward of the state. Ironically, when DJ was only a few weeks old, he too became very, very ill with the same symptoms as little baby Ryan did. He was having breathing issues and he was vomiting. He was also seizing at times. I mean, it was pretty bad. To me, it sounds even more severe than Ryan's symptoms, but I don't know. Maybe it was the same symptoms. He was diagnosed with methylmalonic acidemia, also known as MMA. This causes the body to produce byproducts that are similar to ethylene glycol. Now, according to a medical hygienist, which they brought in, it is very, very easy for medical physicians to confuse MMA with ethylene glycol poisoning. Now, MMA inhibits the body to process food, especially proteins. It also produces toxins in the blood that can become lethal. And they wondered if Ryan Stalling had also died from MMA and not ethylene glycol poisoning. Like, god damn, this woman got some bad luck. She didn't even get a chance to go to her own baby's funeral. Are you kidding me? At this point, I just stopped having children. Medical examiners went back to square one and looked at the case all over again. They had to reevaluate all of the evidence and go through all of the samples. Patricia was then released on a recognizance bond, which back then was not even heard of in a murder case. But the prosecutors were not buying it. They did not believe that Ryan died from MMA because they sent the test out to 2 different labs, and both of those labs came back and said that Ryan had died from ethylene glycol. I think at this point they just wanted to believe that Ryan had died from ethylene glycol because at this point they had made that would have been such a huge mistake. And when they did an autopsy report on Ryan, they found calcium oxalate crystals on Ryan's brain, which would be consistent with ethylene glycol poisoning. So the prosecution was really trying to push this guilty conviction that they had originally gotten for Patricia. Somebody needs to help me out here. I'm out here alone in the woods, girl, trying to do these nails. Don't worry, it's all good. We're gonna fix it with the nail file. I know it's looking a little jacked. And remember, even Ryan's baby bottle had traces of ethylene glycol on it. I mean, if she didn't do it, the circumstantial evidence looks pretty strong. I'm not gonna lie. So because of the evidence, the murder case did go to trial, and the prosecution was really seeking the death penalty. The defense attorney was not able to get anyone to testify that it was in fact MMA that killed Ryan. At this point, all the evidence pointed to Patty Stallings, so there's pretty much nothing that they could do. On March 4th, 1991, Patricia was convicted of Ryan's murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the jury gave their conviction, her husband David was so in shock that he actually ended up passing out and was taken to the hospital. Patricia was just mortified. She really didn't know what to do, how to handle it, how to react. She had only seen her son DJ 3 times since his birth. David was only allowed to see DJ once a week. Patricia continued to maintain her innocence. This will remain the same until 2 scientists came along and took a second look at the case. These scientists thought that maybe, perhaps, the tests that were done by their colleagues in these labs were not exactly accurate. They sent out Ryan's blood samples spiked with propionic acid to a number of different labs to see if they would misread it. And sure enough, they misread the test as ethylene glycol. Proof that any lab could make this type of mistake, including the lab that took part in Patricia's case in the trial. Using a graph in court, the scientists were able to show that had the other scientists superimposed the two, they would have saw that they were actually very different. In May of 1991, the original episode of Patricia's case aired on Forensic Files. After the broadcast, a number of different physicians familiar with MMA came forward to help assist in Patricia's appeal. Her attorneys petitioned the court, and on July 30th, 1991, Patricia was released and her appeal was granted. Following that, a press conference was held in St. Louis on September 20th, 1991. A geneticist from Yale University stated that the independent serum confirmed that Ryan had in fact died of MMA, and all the charges against Patricia were dropped. Patricia and David were able to get their son DJ back in October that year. Oh my gosh, I nicked it. I told you I'm that girl that can't leave the goddamn nail salon without nicking her nails. Later, David and Patricia sued the hospital and the labs that incorrectly diagnosed Ryan with ethylene glycol poisoning. I don't blame them. I would have done the same thing. I mean, she went to prison, you guys. You can't be making mistakes with people's lives out here, like. In 1993, they settled the lawsuit that awarded them several $million. Sadly, DJ did pass away on September 17th, 2013. He was just 23 years old. David and Patricia later divorced, and David passed away on April 30th, 2019 at the age of 57. So although they did win the settlement, it still was a tragic case. What did you guys think about this case and my nail look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, you can check out my last episode. It'll be linked on the screen right here or right here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys next week with another Forensic Friday episode. Bye!